Okay, so I'm going to make a video on some of the developments in the European Parliament today, but before I do that, I want to talk about some of the racism that we're seeing in this country and xenophobia. Though xenophobia is a more technically accurate term because a lot of this is white, um, white hostility towards white people, ethnically white people. So perhaps xenophobia is a more accurate term. But that doesn't trivialize it in any way. It's just as nasty and vicious. I've just been listening to a segment by James O'Brien on LBC. It was on a link, and he was listening to a German woman who lived in the middle class area. I believe it was somewhere in the Midlands. Can't remember exactly, but she was very upset. She was crying. She was very audibly very frightened. This is a call-in radio station, and she was saying that she has lived in the UK since the late 1970s. Her husband had been a doctor. Her late husband had been a doctor. He'd worked in the NHS, and what she was experiencing from her middle class, middle aged neighbours was to have excrement put through their box, to be told directly that they no longer want to associate with foreigners. Um, and all and basically just the way she was describing it. LBC posts regular YouTube videos, so should be there. But I'll try and put a link if I get a chance. Yeah, it really sounded quite difficult. I found it actually quite hard to listen to because you could clearly tell this woman was very very upset. Um, she said that she contacted the German embassy, and according to her, they said you made your bed and stay in it. No, I don't know whether they directly said that or not. Sometimes when people are upset, they do exaggerate a bit. Um, James O'Brien took it quite well. He was trying to be compassionate, but also um, level-headed about it. Um, I have no reason to doubt what the woman is saying. She's clearly very upset. Now, it is true that you get sometimes people who are a bit too sensitive and they take things to heart. I I'll be honest, I'm slightly wary of some of the things she was saying. Like suddenly her neighbours have turned nasty. I don't know how true that is, but by the same token, who am I to doubt her? I mean, this sort of situation does sometimes happen when suddenly there's a dynamic shift in something. I remember after 9/11, for example, there were certain incidents of Americans who had lived for years with their Muslim neighbours with no problem suddenly being cold with their Muslim neighbours. Now, obviously, this isn't the same event because it's not a major terrorist attack we're talking about, but it is a major political event. And the reports I've been hearing, you could just say, well, racism's always been a problem, but I think it is irrefutable that what Brexit has done has given a green light to racist cards to basically behave in this sort of way. I hope LBC can help this woman in some way. I don't know, take her details, try and liaise with the police or whatever. Just find some way to, um, it's absolutely disgusting that anyone should have to go through that. And I have a lot of empathy because you know, I've, I've been in a situation where I've been frightened to leave my own house. She said she hasn't left her house in 3 days. It's very serious. I hope these are isolated incidents and this isn't really widespread. Since the Brexit vote, there has been some pretty ugly racism out there. There has been pretty nasty messages left to Polish people. There was graffiti sprawled on a Polish community centre in Hammersmith in West London, and there had been violent attacks on the street. There was a Polish man and his son were brutally beaten up by a pack of thugs. It is important, I think, to really understand what are racist attacks and what are coincidence situations. I mean, if you get a situation where I don't know, you get some drunks and they just target the nearest person, the person happens to be from mainland Europe, that may honestly be coincidence. But if there's clearly xenophobic intentions behind these crimes as there are, for example, in the case of the notes, and what this woman has been reporting, that needs to be dealt with the full force of the law. I also give LBC its credit because I think they're a very balanced radio station, that they sort of show everything. And James O'Brien will probably be a left on the political left, but he did make a very good point about the Sun and their pathetic hypocrisy. The Sun is the country's biggest selling newspaper now. I'm not going to lie, I'm very biased when it comes to tabloids. I think they're trash. But what he was saying was very valid in terms of, well, why they're trash, basically. Um, Yesterday, or I should say 2 days ago, the Sun was trying to justify, actually, it was yesterday, according to James O'Brien. They were trying to explain why the Brexit vote happened, and they were talking about areas where there were Polish immigrants and so on, and they had a very nativist sort of article, as they always do. Today, they're talking about us all coming together and not, not attacking foreigners. That you can't have both positions. I mean, if it's just a case of saying we believe in immigration numbers should be controlled and so on, that would be one thing. But the Sun newspaper has a track record of very nasty xenophobia towards other Europeans. They're they're too clever now to be outright racist, so they wouldn't say anything particularly derogatory about black people or something like that. They're too clever for that. But they are outright xenophobic, there's no question about that. And to be fair, the Daily Mirror isn't much better. When Piers Morgan was editor, I've read his biography. He admitted that he was dead wrong when he would, talk in very disparaging terms about Germans and so on. The fact of the matter is, there has long been a xenophobic attitude in this country, and long before the EU as well. Um, without wanting to turn this into a history lesson, we shouldn't assume this is a new thing. Back in the Great Fire of London, 1666, it was Huguenot, French, and Dutch immigrants who were basically scapegoated for the Great Fire, and there was many foreigners basically lynched on the street. And it was reported at the time this was something that was seen to be unique to England. That was before the United Kingdom was formed. Um, so British nativism has always been a problem in this country. The sort of attitude that we have that we're the special island. And look, I love my country, and I do think there is a unique British identity, but we must stand against this sort of ugly xenophobia and racism. We must do that. That's not to say this is the only country where you will find racism. You'll find racism all over Europe. Of course you will. I mean, Germany's got plenty of far right groups. Poland is not the most tolerant country in the world. So it does exist everywhere, but it's not good enough just saying, oh, well, it happens elsewhere, so we'll just ignore the problem. This is our country. We have a responsibility to sort this out. And my message to any other Europeans watching this is please, please don't feel that the whole country is out to get you. There's a small minority of cards, thugs, and morons who are using this as some sort of green light, but they're going to be arrested, they're going to face consequences. And in terms of legal repercussions for this, that doesn't change a thing. The Brexit vote doesn't change a thing in terms of, for example, legislation against hate crime, which is pretty strong in this country, much stronger than it is in some other countries, I would add. So I do hope these people face the full force of the law. It is absolutely unacceptable that they are terrorizing people simply for their nationality. It's disgusting, it's cowardly, and we should not just condemn it, but actively campaign against it. Now, I'm doing what I can by uploading this video, and I'll reach out to Europeans I know within my city. I'll try and do what I can. By the way, this is not about being politically correct. I'm not saying you can't have debates about migration and so on. And I'm not saying there are not problems with migration, though it's completely legitimate to talk about those things. And that's something the left need to understand as well. But when that then translates into outright racist attacks, we need to just see it what it is. It's disgusting. And it is cowardly as well because it's a pack mentality. Now, I condemn that wherever I see it in the world. And this is not something unique to Britain. I've seen it all over the world. It's I've seen it in China. I've seen it in other parts of Europe. Certainly exists in the United States. It exists in Russia. It exists all over the world without question. But as I say, it is happening on our shores right now, and I don't know what the sort of statistics are. I guess police figures will show that at the end of the year. It is true that the media should also be responsible and not scaremonger and give the impression there's like pogrom of Europeans going on. It's nothing like that. And it may well be that these sort of things were happening before. But what the victims are saying is that this is something they haven't experienced on this level before. And we need to take that seriously. For example, the spokeswoman of the Polish Community Centre said that they had never had problems with locals until this point. So I think there are some people using Brexit as an excuse. They need to be aware that our laws have not changed. Hate crime laws are still very much in place, and the police should be absolutely arresting people, and the court should be prosecuting people. Um, I'm not saying someone should be arrested simply for having a view, but when your view translates as harassment, like leaving notes for people, scrawling graffiti on walls, making people feel physically intimidated, that needs to be challenged. And like I say, it's not a new thing. I mentioned the Great Fire of London. There's other historic precedents. The evil May Day riots in London, 1517. Apprentices basically went on a rampage and lynched other Europeans. Um, During the Elizabethan era, there were attacks on foreigners, and I believe it was Elizabethan era. I may be mistaken in that, but we have a long precedent with this. Um, During the 1880s, time of Jack the Ripper in London, there was outsiders blamed for that. The Jews were blamed. Um, there's a very long precedence of xenophobia and racism in this country. We often say we're a tolerant and welcoming country, and we've had people from all over the world. And that is true on some level. We have given refuge to people from all over the world, but by the same token, we cannot downplay the very real racism that has existed throughout our history. And, other countries have had it, but we have had it. And it's at times been very nasty and very ugly. I detest racism. It sickens me to the core. Um, it's just a very poisonous way to think about the world, and people just need to be very careful here. Um, though it works both ways, I will say this, it does also work both ways. So if you're European living in the UK, you need to respect this country as well. And, if you're going around saying, oh, the British are racist and blah, 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 if you're kind of tarring us all with the same brush and you're basically vilifying the country, you're not going to help yourself. So it does work both ways as well. And I also staunchly believe in integration and when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I think that, goes hand in hand with tolerance. Absolutely. So my final message, if you're European and you're living in the UK, as far as I'm concerned, you're still welcome here. I see you as fellow Europeans, and if something does happen, please do report it to the police because they can't do anything if they don't know what's happening. You need to report this to the police. I think most police will take it seriously because hate crime legislation in this country is very strict. So if someone harasses you on the street, or you get your house vandalized or something, please do report it. Because the people doing it can't get away with it. So please report that. And please don't think that this is a whole picture. I'm sure you don't. I'm sure most of you are open-minded enough to know that we're not all the same. And finally, also, like I said, if you are just complaining about everything and saying, "Oh, the British are this, the British are that," well, frankly, you're inviting some animosity as well. So it does work both ways. I will say that, just out of the nature of balance. Thank you for watching.